Good afternoon, everybody. I feel like my lens is a little dirty there. I got a massive glare coming off there for some reason. It's never done that before. Let me try something real quick. So these cameras aren't exactly the best on here. There we go. That's better. For some reason, there was a glare on there. Might look into getting a little bit better camera. But anyway, thanks for joining me this afternoon. Hopefully, you all have had a great weekend. And looking at some questions that came in before we got started here. So Justin I says, what? And I'm just going to assume that you can hear me, by the way. It says, what drill or section of the golf system do you recommend for a late release or hand dragger through impact? I always feel at the last second my hands feel tight and awkward and don't get proper natural effortless whip release through impact, maybe years of holding on too tight. So first of all, Justin, I'm not sure if you looked at this, but I would make sure to look at your swing on camera and make sure that that's actually what's happening. It's a fairly uncommon thing for people to drag the club. It's not a natural thing at all, but maybe it's something that you've felt like you've needed to do, where maybe you had some instruction that told you that you need to drag the club through, and that's what you kind of trained yourself to do. Maybe you're in that area, but I find that to be pretty rare most of the time. So look at your swing on camera and make sure that you are releasing the club when dragging the club through impact. So what you'd want to work on, what section you would want to work on is called our straight line release section. So if you see, and I'll angle this down so you can see me a little bit better. If you look at your swing on camera and you see, hey, I'm coming through impact and I'm just kind of dragging this club through and then I release it way out here, you're going to want to work through our straight line release section. And ideally what we want to do as far as the release is concerned, and we're defining the release, everybody kind of has a different, definition of what the release is. But what we call the release is where the club is splitting the forearms, after impact. Usually it's happening after impact. Hopefully, if it's happening before impact, then you're really releasing that club early. But it's basically where in the downswing and the follow through, when that club is splitting the forearm. So ideally, that would be about 45 degrees out in front. And that's give or take. Anywhere in that 28, that's going to be, Justin Rose releases it about 28 degrees out in front. And then probably up into that 55-degree range, that's where you're going to see players like Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka. That's where they're releasing the club. So anywhere in that range is probably going to be a pretty good place to be. So basically what we like to see as we're going through impact, we got some forward chaffling, and then this club releases out in front about 45 degrees. And you can see right here, this club is splitting my forearms here, and that's about 45 degrees out in front. That's kind of ideally what we like to see. So to work on that, you're going to want to work on the straight line release course. To get to the courses, just click the house icon at the top of the page, scroll down, and then you'll see all the courses there. I'll show your course progress. Click on that straight line release section and start working through those drills there to help you get that club to release. Because, yes, we definitely want to be generating some lag, and we want to generate a good amount of lag here, and then we want to release it as much as we can, as hard as we can out in front. That's ideally what we want to have happen. So I'd be looking at that drill or those drills in that course to help you with that. All right, so then I saw there were some subsequent questions from Patrick G, and Abdul R, talking about, they're flipping the club and they need help. How do they get help with this? So I'm just going to tackle both of your questions here in one. And basically, what I can tell you is what I see 85-90% of the time why people flip the club. I can tell you those things. But in order for me to know for a fact what it is that's causing you to flip the club, I need to see your swing and be able to pinpoint all of these things. And again, I do offer unlimited swing reviews. I do have a couple spots available right now. If you want me to take a look at your swing, I'll be happy to. You just click on that Get a Review at the top of the page, or you'll also see there's another link there right above the video where you should be able to follow to be able to work one-on-one with me or Robin. I can tell you the main things that I see that cause the flip of the club. So number one is coming down steep in transition. That's typically what I see. If you're coming down steep, and what I mean is in this downswing, if you're looking from down the line, you want to look at this club and see where the butt end of the club is pointing. You want to look at, there's a laser, as if there's a laser pointing out the bottom of this club. You want to look and see where that is pointing. Ideally, that'd be pointing a little bit outside of the golf ball. So I don't have let me grab a golf ball here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So let me angle this down. So first of all, you want to make sure that you are getting a good camera angle here. Now, I don't have the best camera angle here. This isn't the one that you're going to want. I'm kind of limited here in my office. But basically, if I'm set up to the golf ball right here and I'm coming down, I want to see this butt end of the club. I want to see this pointing a little bit outside of the golf ball. So you can see there, that's pointing a little bit outside of the golf ball. This is going to allow me to stay in my posture and get this club working down into impact correctly. Whereas if I'm steep, now I'm coming down, I'm more like this. The butt end of the club is pointing inside of the golf ball. What I have to do now to get this club to come back down on plane is I have to stand up. I got to do this action. And then when I stand up, I'm not really rotating into impact. My upper body's moving away from the golf ball. And now I've got to flip the club to get to the golf ball. So that's really the number one thing that I see is steepness in the downswing. So let's say you've looked at your swing and you see, well, I'm shallowing it out. That's not the issue. Well, the next issue is most likely that you are flipping the club because that's how you're used to squaring up the face. So, Dual, you mentioned that you looked and you saw this wrist breakdown, that lead wrist breakdown. Well, what's happening here is because your dominant hand is that trail hand. This position to get forward shaft lean, where your right wrist, your trail wrist, is bent back, that's a weak feeling position for a lot of people. So what do? This feels way more powerful to really push that club through with the right hand, with the trail hand. Sorry, lefties, I keep saying the right hand, but you know what I mean. The trail hand is what I'm talking about. You're coming in, you're really pushing that club through. That feels more powerful. But what's actually happening here is you are adding loft to the club face, which is a much less powerful thing to do. And then the other thing you're doing is you're really shallowing out this club late at impact. This club is now coming in very, very level with the turf, and it makes it very difficult to get that center face contact, this contact that's higher up on the face. It makes it so that you get a lot of thin shots. So if you're someone that doesn't take divots ever, this is most likely what's happening with you. You're coming down steep and or you're flipping as you're coming into impact. You're breaking down this lead wrist. That trail wrist is really pushing the club through. It's more in this kind of flat position as you're coming into impact. And that's what's going on. So what you need to do is you need to train yourself to have a square club face and forward shaft lean. So what you have to do in that position is you've got to turn that handle down. So if you watch here, here's my impact position where I'm coming in and I don't have any forward shaft lean, lead wrist breakdown, trail wrist is fairly straight. And I bring it up here so I can kind of show you I have no forward shaft lean here. Now, if I keep these exact wrist angles, so lead wrist broken down, trail wrist straight, if I keep those wrist angles and I push my hands forward, now look what happens to that club face. I have forward shaft lean, but that club face is wide open. So you can see I have forward shaft lean, club face is wide open. So this is a big problem for a lot of people for getting forward shaft leans because they don't know how to square the club face when they have this forward shaft lean. They're leaving that face wide open. So what do? You have to turn the handle down to square up the club face. So now you can see at impact here, here's my previous position. Club face is open and my hands are pushed forward, same wrist angles as before. Now I turn that down, I square the club face. Now look at my trail wrist. My trail wrist is in this bent back position, and then my lead wrist is kind of in this bowed position or even flat position. It really just depends on how strong or weak your grip is, but this position right here is the one that you need for forward shaft lean. So that's the number one things that I see for producing forward shaft lean at impact, the reason why most people flip. And the course, if you may be gathering what course that I'm talking about to help fix that, That's going to be the move course. In the move course, you are training yourself, number one, to shallow out the club. And then number two, to get that club face squaring earlier, that turning of the handle down, so that when you are bringing that club into impact, you have a forward shaft lane and a square club face. So I would go to the move course and start working through those drills. Work through all the drills. It's about a 7 or 8 video series. Work through the drills. Take your time working through it. You know, understand that you're going to struggle with it at first because it's not something that you're comfortable with yet, but work through that course. It's most likely what's going to be to help you the most. Now, there could be other things that are going on. You could have a poor weight shift. You don't use any lower body in your swing. Maybe you're hanging back and you have to throw the arms at it to compensate for things. Maybe you're hanging back and the arms are starting too soon and you just can't keep up. You can't catch up and get that weight shift to the lead side. You could be coming way over the top. You could be getting stuck in the downswing. There's all kinds of things that could be going on, but that move, that's coming down steep and or squaring up the club face by flipping the club through with that strong trail wrist position, those are likely the things that are going on. So check your swing on camera. Take a look at those things that I just talked about and film your swing from down the line and face on, and you can see those things very, very easily. So hopefully that helps. And if you want help with that, I'll be happy to help you. I do offer unlimited swing reviews, and we can go through it and make sure that you're on the right track as you're doing it. And I can point out any other thing that's causing you issues as well. We can't go through all of it on here, but we can go through the main things. All right, so let me get a drink here real quick. All right, so Richard W. says, hi, in the Toss Golf system, you do not differentiate between drivers and irons. Hence, do I correctly assume that I do all movements that the Toss Golf system teaches apply equally in irons and drivers? So the answer to your question is yes and no. So the Toss Golf system applies, yes, to all clubs that you're taking a full swing with, but there can be some variances between your irons and your driver, even your wedges. For example, if you're taking a full swing with your wedge, the shorter clubs, and basically that comes down to kind of your compression line and your spine angles a little bit. So basically, the only difference, not the only difference, but the biggest difference between your driver swing and your iron swing is your iron swing, you have to hit down on the golf ball. Your angle of attack, the club needs to be coming down, getting that ball first contact, then the ground to hit solid golf shots. So in order to do that, we need to be slightly angled away from the target with our compression line. So our compression line being that line that goes from our ankle to our hip to our shoulder socket at impact. That's this position right there. So nice and slightly angled away with an iron. But since with a driver, ideally, we'd like to hit up on the ball a little bit because that's going to help us get a higher launch. It's going to lower the spin, which is going to give you more distance. So hitting more up on the golf ball means that we can be a little bit more angled away. That's going to allow us to get that more upward angle of attack on the golf ball. Now with a wedge, because maybe we're trying to get a little bit more spin, we're really trying to get, it shorter. So, the club arc is a little bit tighter. We play that ball back in our stance a little bit more. We can be a little bit more vertical with our compression line there to get that more downward angle of attack. So pretty much, yes, it's all the exact same for the most part. Maybe with your spine angles, you might be a little bit more angled away with a driver versus a little bit more vertical with wedges and somewhere in between with irons. And then when you go up to power turn, maybe you're making a little bit more of an aggressive swing with your driver. So maybe your shoulder turn is a little bit more because you're being more aggressive. And then with your other clubs, it might be a little bit more toned down. When you're talking about lag, again, same thing. Maybe you're a little bit more aggressive with your driver. There's also a little bit more momentum. It's a longer lever arm, which is going to help you to generate more lag. So naturally, typically, you're going to generate more lag with the longer clubs versus the shorter clubs. And then if you look at, I just mentioned compression line, what's going on there? A straight line release is going to be pretty much the exact same. Naturally, you may end up releasing the club a little bit more out in front with a driver because of how your body is becoming more angled away as you're coming in. You're not hitting as down on it. So all of those things, factor into it. So yes, Top-Speed Golf System applies to all clubs that you're taking a full swing with, whether it's a driver, iron, or wedge. But there can be varying degrees in there. And you're right, this isn't something that we talk about a ton, I don't believe. It is mentioned in some vault videos. I believe I've seen Clay mention it in some vault videos, but it's not something that we extensively talk about in the system really at all. But that's a great question. Thanks for asking. All right. So David W. says, I am pushing my irons left, and then mentions that he is left-handed. So if you're pushing your irons, that is a product of the face being open and the path being in to out. So basically, if you were hitting a shot that doesn't have any curvature on it, that means that your club face at impact and your club path, the direction the club head is moving through impact, the side-to-side movement anyway, that movement it's basically in the same direction. So what you want to do is actually try to feel like you are coming more over the top. I would try to feel like you're swinging more out to in because you're aligning your face with your path, which is good. You want, that's something that's very good. You want to marry those two together. That's how you're going to get the most compressed golf shots. Anything other than married up is going to give you, a kind of more of a glancing blow, a cutting across the golf ball. So if you got to where you are swinging more out to in, more likely you are going to align your face with your path yet again. So what I would try to do is adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. The easiest way to fix anything is to exaggerate the opposite. So what would be the opposite of a push? The opposite of a push would be a pull. So I would actually try to swing more out to in and try to hit a pull and see if you can do that. And then if you actually do hit a pull, then just ease off of that feeling a little bit to get it to straighten out. If you still hit that push out to the right, or sorry, for you, it'd be out to the left, since you're left-handed, then you'll just want to exaggerate that even more. Try to feel like you're coming over the top even more and swinging way more out to in, and that will most likely fix it. So give that a try the next time you go out and see if that helps with your path, your ball flight. All right, so that was the last question on here. So be sure to post your questions on here if you'd like it to get answered. Like I said, I'll be on here up until I'm actually going to play. I got tee time to catch, so right at 4 o'clock, I will be out of here. So make sure to get your questions on here so that I can get them answered. If not, you guys get to watch me check my email, which I'm sure is no fun. So go ahead and get your questions on there, and then we'll get them answered as soon as we can. If you have any questions about, swing reviews or, what's going on with those, I'd be happy to answer any questions there. Any questions about any of the programs on here, I'll be happy to help you with that as well. Go ahead and post them on there, and we will. I'll get them answered for you. I would like to do a quick shout out to somebody who's in our ball striking masterclass. She had just started playing golf. I'm not going to name her, but she had just started playing golf and a little while ago, and she's going through our ball striking masterclass. Not to say that because she went through our ball striking masterclass is what happened, but she just got her first hole-in-one. So congratulations to her. That was awesome. She posted that in our Facebook group that we have for the course. So the ball striking masterclass, if you're not familiar with it, we offer this. This is a course. That's a course that we offer every few months, 1 or 2 months typically. So we just closed enrollment on the latest one a couple weeks ago, but we should be offering it again mid-September to late September. And basically, and I see there's questions on there. I'll get to those here in a minute. But it's a 90-day program. Highly recommend it. And what we do in there is we don't work on really any technique. It's all about improving your awareness of the club face in your club head and all those things, So the last question that I answered was about adjusting your field to get the desired result that you want with fixing that push. Well, that's a lot of the kinds of things that you're doing when you're going through that course. So highly recommend that course. Very, very educational as well. You're going to learn the correct way to practice to get the fastest improvement. We've talked about some of that stuff on the course, but or in the fastest way to improve, the scientific way, or whatever. I think this course that's on here. Let's talk about it a little bit in there, but it's more drills and stuff to fully apply those. All right, so we have a bunch of questions. So thanks everybody for jumping on the gun there and getting some questions in there. We'll go ahead and start answering those. So Roy F said, this may be a perception versus reality issue. Is lag diminished some when I do the tennis racket drill? Can you do it wrong? So usually lag is actually, if you are shallowing out the club, you actually get the appearance of more lag. It's typically what happens. So when we talk about what gives the appearance of lag, there's a few things. So number one, as you can probably imagine, is the wrist being bent back and more in this thumbs up position. So that gives some of the appearance of lag. But look, that's not very much lag, is it? We talk about this angle. We're wanting this angle to be 65 degrees. Well, that's maybe 20 degrees at most. And I'm keeping my wrist nice and flat here. So if I bent it, I can maybe get a little bit more. See, I'm cupping, but I don't want to do that. I want to keep it nice and flat there. And that's going to give me the appearance of the most lag there. So now what happens is if I have this straight up and down here, if I shallow this out, now look at that angle. That angle is sharpened up considerably. So if I get to here, here's straight up and down. There's where I've shallowed this club out. So straight up and down, I've shallowed this club out. Now look, I've got that nice angle of lag. The last piece is the momentum of the club. So I was talking about earlier about how the driver a lot of times will have the appearance of more lag, and that's because it has a longer lever arm here. So there's more momentum going in that direction. So the longer arm that you have, the more momentum that can be generated, all things equal. So when I'm bringing this club back, just watch what I do. Watch how much lag I can really generate there just from getting the club to go that way and switching directions. So that's what constitutes lag. So when you're working on the tennis racket drill, which if you're not familiar with what the tennis racket drill, actually I have a tennis racket handy here so that because this drill comes up quite a bit because this is one of the key drills from the move course. The tennis racket drill, we're talking about getting this club to shallow out. We're trying to point these strings up to the sky here and then turning that down to get that club face to square up. So you can see here that shallowing out, that gives me that angle of lag there instead of if I'm straight up and down like that. So that's what's going to give you that appearance of lag. So hopefully that makes sense with what you're doing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing it wrong. It could be that when you do this, maybe you're not relaxing that trail wrist and letting that trail wrist to bend back. Because if you turn the handle down, but don't relax that trail wrist, it's not, you allow that trail wrist to bend back. You can see my trail wrist is going back like this. If you keep that trail wrist kind of straight, well, then that's kind of in that casting position. So you got to keep it more in that bent back kind of position there. So Roy, that might be what's going on there. Try to relax that trail wrist. Try to be in that kind of like you're a waiter, like you're holding up a tray at the top of the swing. So you see at the top of the swing here, I try to feel like I'm holding a tray, like I'm a waiter, and that's going to allow me to get that club to nice and shallow out and get that nice angle of lag there. So I've been looking at that. Maybe that's what's going on there. All right. So next question here. Robert S. says, office hours are fantastic. Keep up the good work. Thank you. My question deals with half or three-quarter shots. I tend to pull these unless I really focus on arm extension through the ball. So it sounds like you're probably, with these half and three-quarter shots, it sounds like you might be kind of swinging all arms a little bit. That's typically what happens. When we shorten up the swing, we don't get that weight shift there to the lead side soon enough. And then what happens is we just kind of throw the arms in front, and then we shut that face down really, really quick. So I'd be looking at making sure, try to feel like that sequence is happening in the same way. You're getting that sequence going to your lead side probably a little bit sooner, and that's going to allow you to get that club to work more from the inside, and also get it to where you're opening up the body and those arms aren't swinging. You're getting that right sequence to where your legs are being used and the arms aren't just flying in front of the body, too soon, causing that club face to come down and shut down. So that's most likely what's going on there. It's hard for me to know exactly without seeing your swing, but I would imagine that's what's going on. A lot of times with those 1/2 and 3/4 shots, since they're not full swings, they're not, we're not going for power on those swings. On a full swing, we're trying to make a powerful athletic movement, right? So we need to have, we need to load up, and then we need to transfer our weight to our lead side. A lot of times with those 1/2 and 3/4 swings, we're trying to hit a specific distance, right? So we're talking like for pitch shots, most likely is what's going on there. And it doesn't need to be a powerful movement. It needs to be just an accurate one. So one where you kind of feel like you're staying on your lead side a little bit, that might help you to not pull those shots. You just want to make sure that you're swinging more from the inside on those, because you likely are going to feel like when you're keeping your weight on your lead side that you're going to want to come over the top a little bit. I would try to feel like you're swinging from the inside to get that path to be moving more into out. That could be what you're already doing. So feel like you're swinging. If you're pulling shots, that's from the path being too much out to in with a closed club face. So best way to fix that is to exaggerate the opposite, which is a push shot. So if you're wanting to get a little bit of weight shift in there, I try to make sure that it's happening sooner so that you're getting your legs more involved. And if you're wanting to have a little bit less weight shift and kind of stay on your lead side and take those 3/4 and 1/2 shots that way, then I would try to feel like you're swinging more into out to get that path to be working in a direction that's going to allow you to hit it straight. All right, so Ron D says, please give an example of a bowed wrist. So basically, this is what bowed wrist means. It's wrist flexion. So this is wrist extension. This is wrist flexion. When people talk about bowing, this is what they're talking about. When people talk about cupping, this is what they're talking about. So when people talk about cupped lead wrist at the top of the swing, that's a cupped lead wrist. Bowed lead wrist at the top of the swing, that's a bowed lead wrist. So basically when we talk about bowing that lead wrist, we're talking about getting that club face to square up. I'm not sure if you were here earlier, Ron, when I was talking about forward shaft lean and how to get that club face square when you have forward shaft lean, but that's what you want to do. You want to have the feeling of bowing that lead wrist. Now, if you're coming into impact, no forward shaft lean, a square club face, you're going to need, when you get forward shaft lean, you're going to need to learn how to square the club face when you have it, and that's by bowing that lead wrist. So if you watch here, if I match this angle, the leading edge with the back of my left hand, if I bow it, see how my left wrist is bowing, you can see how that's closing the club face. So I need to do that when I'm getting forward shaft lean because that opens the face. So I got to compensate for that by closing it, by bowing that lead wrist. And that's what we talk about in the move course. So I highly recommend working through that move course if you're having trouble getting forward shaft lean and getting that wrist to bow. Do a great drill in there where you're coming down to about right here and you're turning this handle down to where the club face is pointing straight down to the ground, just like that. And then from here, you turn into impact with forward shaft lean and a square club face. That's a fantastic drill because it really, really exaggerates what you're trying to do. And that brings me to another point that a tip that I think will really help people is if you're ever trying to achieve a technique that you're not comfortable with, and it's really, really hard for you to do, exaggerate it as much as you humanly possibly can. So that drill I was just talking about, where we're coming down to here and we're turning that handle down so much to where the club face is pointing down to the ground like that, that's exaggerating it as much as we possibly can. You really can't exaggerate it much more than that. In reality, when you're coming into impact, the face is not like that, but we're turning that handle down like that because we're trying to exaggerate the feeling that you're trying to achieve. And that will really help you accelerate your progress by working through it that way. So, the worst thing that can happen is that you actually overdo it in your swing. Excuse me. And then at that point, all you have to do is just ease off of that toward what you're more comfortable with. It's so much easier to overdo something than ease off of it toward more what you're comfortable with, as opposed to trying to whittle away and get a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. That just takes forever to do that. And you really never get fully comfortable with it. You're always going to be uncomfortable with it until you just get tons and tons of reps in with it. So to accelerate your progress, overdo it, do it as much as you possibly can, and that will help things quite a bit. So Jane S. says, I'm pulling my irons and driver. So Jane, I mentioned one. I'm not sure if you were here for the push when someone was talking about they're pushing all their shots. It's going to be the opposite for you. You're going to want to feel like, I told him to work on trying to feel like you're pulling the ball, feel like you're swinging more out to in. Well, what's going on with you to hit a pulled shot, what ends up happening is your path is out to in and your face is in line with your path. If there's no curvature on your shot, then that means that your face and path are in the same direction. So that's good to have your face and your path in the same direction. But if your path is too much to the left, you're going to get that pull shot. So what you want to do is get that path, feel like it's working way more into out, feel like you're hitting a push shot, like you're going to push it out to the right. And there's some great drills to work on that. They're in the Never Slice Again course. Now, I know you're not slicing, but slicing and pulling are a product of the same issue, which is swinging too much out to in. That's that over-the-top thing. The only difference is that with a slice, your club face is not in line with the path. It's open to the club path. So the ball starts in the direction of the club face, and then it curves away from the club path. If your face and path are in the same direction, the ball is going to start in the direction of the club face, and it's not going to have much curvature on it. So that's what's happening with you. Get that club working more from the inside. And what I mean by that is if you're pulling the ball, what's going to look like on camera is this club's coming down. It's most likely outside of the hands, which means you're kind of cutting across the ball. You have that out to in club path. So this would be out to in club path. You want to get that club path and feel like it's working more in to out. And that's going to help you get that pull fixed with all your clubs. That's not just the driver, not just the iron, that's everything. It comes down to adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want, get that club path working more into out, and it'll be much better for you. All right. So John S. says, what type of setup and club position, opened or closed, do you recommend for a sand shot with a firm lie? So with a sand shot, you want to open up the face quite a bit, about 45 degrees. So if I have a wedge here, I got a 60-degree wedge. If I was to open the face 45 degrees, that would be that right there. So you can see I haven't changed. I didn't do this with my grip to make that happen. I moved the club in my hand and then gripped the club. So now I have a 45-degree open. And if you are hitting at a firm turf, it just means you're going to have to hit closer to the golf ball. So with a typical bunker shot where maybe you're in some kind of fluffier kind of sand, pretty much all sand has kind of a soft layer, and then underneath a few inches it has a firmer layer where there's more moisture. But maybe it just rained where you're at, or maybe your bunkers are just hard and crusty or whatever it might be. It's actually fairly easy to hit out of these bunkers. It just takes a little bit of practice. It's the same technique that you would have before. The only difference is that you would hit a little bit closer to the golf ball. So instead of hitting 4 to 6 inches behind the golf ball, which would be in that range there, you might hit 2 to 3 inches behind the golf ball, and still you want to allow that to glide through the turf. The reason why you wouldn't want to have the same exact distance behind the golf ball is because if you hit too far behind the golf ball and the turf is, or not the turf, but the sand is really firm, a lot of times that club will hit the sand and then it'll kind of bounce up and you'll end up blading it out of there. So obviously we don't want to do that. So in order to alleviate that, we want to hit 2 to 3 inches behind the golf ball, somewhere in that area. It's just something you're going to have to practice with, with the sand that you're in and getting a feel for it. And what I always like to do is whenever I get in the sand, I like to wiggle my feet and dig in a little bit, and that will help you. The reason why there's a couple of reasons why you see a lot of people do that, or tour players do that. One is to get a little bit more stability because if you're in fluffy sand or in sand and dry, it's loose, right? So digging in a little bit is going to help you to get a little bit more stability. And then number two is to get a feel for the sand. To get, if you are kind of digging in there and you're not digging down anywhere, that sand is pretty darn firm, right? So in extreme cases where it is very firm sand, and that this club is really not going to dig hardly at all, in those cases you can close the face just a little bit. So when I'm talking, you're going 45 degrees open, I would maybe go 35, 30 degrees open instead, and that will allow it just to dig a little bit to help it get underneath the golf ball. But that's only in extreme situations. So again, firm sand, it's the exact same setup as it would be a normal bunker shot. The only difference is that when you are hitting the ball, you're going to want to hit the golf ball 2 to 3 inches behind it, somewhere in that range. If it's really, really firm sand, then you want to hit maybe just close the face just a little bit from 45 degrees. So instead of 45, go 30, 35 degrees, and that's going to allow it to dig just a little bit. But again, it's something you're going to want to practice and make sure that you accelerate through it. Take whatever length swing is going to allow for the shot, and make sure that you accelerate through it. The biggest issue that I see with people in sand, one of the biggest ones, is that they take this big swing and then they decelerate because they see they're only 20 yards away from the flag, and they're taking this swing that they feel like, in a normal circumstance, I would hit this ball 80 yards or something like that. So what happens, they don't trust it, and they decelerate. So and that's the other problem that I see with folks that, really have trouble with their sand game. They never practice it. They never practice it. If they practiced it, then they would be comfortable and understand that when they hit the sand, it takes a lot out of the club, and the ball doesn't go near as far. So it takes some practice. Spend an afternoon. Hopefully you have a place where you can go and practice this and understand and get a feeling for what happens. If it's not your normal course, go to a course that has it. Hopefully you have another one nearby you. And, if they have nice sand there, bring a water bottle and put some water in the sand to make it a little bit more firmer, make it similar to the conditions that you play with, and hit hit at a different lies in there, hit where the ball's buried down a little bit, hit a bright egg, hit one that's a little bit uphill, hit one that's a little bit downhill, hit one that's a side hill. See how the ball reacts when you hit it, and that'll make you a much better bunker player. Just take some practice. But trust me, once you get the feel for it, bunker is usually very easy. The only time when hitting out of a bunker becomes very difficult is, one, if you get one of those downhill lies, that becomes very difficult. Or two, if you get the ball where it's a bad lie, where it's plugged in there. But the other thing you have to consider is that it is a hazard. It's not somewhere where you're supposed to go. So sometimes, when you hit it in the hazard, you just got to take your medicine and just try to get it on the green and move forward from there. But if you have a good lie in the bunker, especially if it's an uphill lie, it's a much easier shot than being in the rough next to it, because you can actually predict how that ball is going to come out. Whereas in the rough, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming between the golf ball and the club face before you hit it. Moisture, grass, you don't have it, how it's going to react out of there is going to be very unpredictable. But out of the sand, it can be very predictable if it's in a good lie. So get good at your bunker game, and take time to go out and understand how the club works through there, and you'll get a lot better with it, and you won't ever really be scared to go in bunkers ever again. All right. So let me see. We got a couple more questions here. So John F says, do you want a bowed wrist with the driver coming into impact also? So yeah, it applies. The move applies to all. So the reason why you wouldn't have as much of a bowed wrist, it's not going to have the appearance of it, is because the ball is more forward in the stance. So the club is releasing a little bit more before it's getting to the golf ball. So if I angle this down, now I just have a wedge right here, but I'll try to illustrate this the best that I can. If I'm coming into impact right here, I'm coming down, I have forward shaft lean, right? I have a bowed, kind of a bowed-ish lead wrist here, and I have a square club face at impact. Now, that's where I play my wedge. Now, if I play my driver straight down from my lead shoulder, so that's going to be, somewhere in this area. Going to be a little bit wider with my stance here. So now I'm coming into impact, and I'm more like this. Well, I don't really have as much of an appearance of forward shaft lean or a bowed wrist. My wrist is more flat in this position. And it also depends on how strong or weak your grip is, on how bowed your wrist will appear. So let me show you. Here is an extreme. I'm going to go an extreme strong grip. So what that means is I'm taking my hand and I'm putting it more on this side of the grip. So that's an extreme strong grip. You can see the V that my thumb and my hand is creating there. It's pointing more toward my shoulder here. So this is a very, very strong grip. So when I come into impact and I have forward shaft lean and a square club face, my wrist may actually appear to be cupped because I have such a strong grip. Now let me show you if I have a very weak grip. So that would be my thumb is going straight down the shaft. You can see the V is kind of going up, kind of straight up to my chin or in this area. That's a very weak grip. In order to come into impact with a square club face and forward shaft lean, look at how much more bowed my wrist has got to be. So if you look at it in those two extremes, your wrist can have a different appearance based on how weak or strong your grip is. So that's something to keep in mind when you're working on this stuff. If you're really trying to focus on getting that wrist bowed at impact and you have a very strong grip, you're going to be working very, very hard to make that happen. It may not even be possible. And if you have a very weak grip, and you see that you have a flat wrist at impact, that doesn't mean that you have forward shaft lean and a square club face at impact. What you got to focus on is forward shaft lean and a square club face. If you have those, that's where you want to be. It doesn't matter. The club doesn't care. Sorry, the ball doesn't care if your wrist is bowed or cupped or what. It only cares about how this club is being presented to it. So if it has a square club face and forward shaft lean at impact, and your wrist is cupped, then great. If it's bowed, then great. It only matters what this club is doing. So hopefully that makes sense as well. All right, so let me get a drink real quick. All right, so Robert S. says, does your tilt spine at address lessen with the higher lofted clubs or the same with each club? In general, it's going to be pretty much the same with all clubs. But like I said earlier, I'm not sure if you were here or you asked a question earlier, Robert. But basically with the driver, you can be a little bit more angled away. And with a wedge, you can be a little bit more vertical. But in general, somewhere in that 6 to 8 degree range with all of those clubs is completely fine. It's not a detail that I would get really too, that's getting a little bit too in the woods, as I would say, getting way too detailed with it. Just try to get to where you're angled away at address. And honestly, your address position is not that important as far as your wrist, or as far as your spine angles is concerned. What's most important is getting in this angled away position as you're coming into impact. This is the most important angle, that 18 to 25 degree angled away position at impact. And again, you can be on the lower side with the wedge, higher side with the driver, because of the angle of attack we're trying to put on the golf ball. But that's the most important angle. It's just we say at address 6 to 8 degrees and then stable to the top, because it's easier to get into this position if you are angled away at address and angled away at the top. If you are setting up like this, straight up vertical, and then you're straight up vertical at the top, it's a little bit harder to get into that position. There's more movement and manipulation that's got it going on. So that's basically where that comes from. And that's where you're going to see most players. You're going to see most players in that slightly angled away position. You're going to see some in a very vertical position. But that most important angle where you're going to see all tour players is that impact position where the spine is in that 18 to 25 degrees angled away position. All right. So Dan K, excuse me, says I have an average swing speed of 93 miles per hour. Will a low compression golf ball give me more distance? Really just depends on the golf ball. I'll tell you, I'm not an expert as far as golf balls are concerned, but I will say if you're looking to get more distance, I'd be working through our 20-minute distance fixed course to raise up your club head speed. You're basically a little bit lower than what the average amateur golfer would be. Average amateur golfer is about 95 miles per hour. And that's across that's all ages. So if you're looking to increase your club head speed or increase your distance, I'd be going to that 20-minute distance fixed course. And I wouldn't be worrying that much about your golf balls because most golf balls really go about the same distance. You know, when you're talking the difference between a low compression golf ball and a higher compression golf ball, you're talking of a difference of a few yards probably. It's really not that much of a difference. But when you're talking about club head speed, typically for about every 1 mile per hour club head speed that you gain, it's about 2.6 yards. So if you go and you gain 10 miles per hour, you just get up to 100 miles per hour, you're talking, nearly 20 yards of distance gain. So that's a much, much bigger gain. And that's what I'd be looking at to improve your distance, not so much worrying about your golf ball. All right. So Clevin P says, can you explain why the inside right elbow is aching after hitting the ball with a club? What is the proper technique for the right arm so the inside elbow won't feel the impact when hitting the ball? So you're talking about, I assume you're right-handed, and you're talking about the inside right elbow. So that's what's referred to as golfer's elbow. So you probably heard of tennis elbow. Tennis elbow is usually referring to the outside of the arm kind of aching in this area. And the easy way to kind of remember that is usually the outside of your arm has got some hair on it. It's fuzzy like a tennis ball. And then the inside of your arm is more bare, no fuzz on it like a golf ball. That's how I remember it. So where that comes from is, if you do something for me real quick, is it comes from these straining it from these going extreme with the wrists here. So if I were to pull my wrist back and put my wrist in extension here, you can see how this feels kind of soft. And now if I go in flexion, where I'm going like this, you can feel how it gets hard. So that's from the strain of doing this a lot. So if you're right-handed, what's happening in the golf swing where you're going like this? That's the flip, right? So you're coming through impact and you're really flipping as you're coming through, or you're really rolling over hard as you're coming through as well. And that can have to do with it. So what I'd be looking at is working on the move, and that's going to help you to get that club face squaring earlier so that you can stay in your posture and turn into impact and have a forward shaft lean in a square club face. Because if you are coming down steep, then what has to happen is you stand up to get this club to come back down plane, and you have to flip the club, and that's putting that excessive strain. If you're hitting a lot of balls and you're getting that tendonitis in there, that's from that flip really pushing that club through there. So as far as, that's what I can tell you technique-wise, what can happen. But I would also recommend going and seeing your doctor, and, what they're probably going to tell you, because usually it's just from strain. Tendonitis is just from strain. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm not a doctor. But from what my understanding of it is, it's just from overstraining, too much going on, and too much strain going on. So you get that aching going on there. So rest is one thing that can really help you with that. But working on your technique and getting that to where you're shallowing out the club and squaring up that face earlier so that you're not doing that through impact, that will help you to alleviate that issue. So that's going to be the move course. If you want to work on the move, you want to go to the click on the home page, which is the house icon at the top of the page there. If you click on that icon, it's going to take you to the home page. If you scroll down, you'll see all the courses there, and you'll click on the move course. I believe it's about halfway down there. Click on that course and start working through the drills. But I would also advise that, if it's hurting you, the only thing that's going to make it, as far as I know, The only thing that's really going to make it heal for you or make it feel better is rest and taking away the strain from it over and over. So get healed up, and then once you feel comfortable, go out there and start working on the move. And like I said, I'll go seek medical attention. Maybe if you have a doctor that's well versed in golf. A lot of golfers are a lot of doctors are golfers. A lot of them understand what's going on there. So that'd be even better if you had one that kind of understood what you're trying to do. So yeah, I highly recommend that. So I got about 10 more minutes here. And like I said, I'm getting off here right at 4. I do have a tea time I got to go get to. So I won't go past 4 o'clock. So if we don't have any questions, I might actually dip out of here early. So get your questions on here. Like I said, I'll be on here until 4 o'clock. Got about 10 more minutes. Get your questions on there. We'll get them answered. And we'll keep on moving through here. In the meantime, I will check my email. I'm sure it's real fun watching me do that. Hey, Dr. Q. I'm not a doctor. I just said I'm not a doctor. James, you got a question, bud? Go ahead and post it on there if you got a question. I'll be happy to answer it. If it's a medical question, I'm not gonna be able to answer any medical questions. I'm definitely not a doctor. So Dan K said he logged on late and he's pulling a driver. Any suggestions? So I've answered this question already a couple times today. But basically, a pull is from having the club face closed at impact with a club path that is out to in. So what you want to do is get that club path working more into out, and that's going to help you to get rid of that pull. So to work on that, go to our Never Slice Again course. And I know that's on slicing, but a slice and a pull are a product of the same issue, which is an out to in club path. So to get the whole program in that Never Slice Again course is to get that club to work more from the inside. So get that club working more from the inside, and it will help you out quite a bit to get rid of that pull. One other thing is that you may be putting that driver too far forward in the stance. When the driver's too far forward in the stance, it's a lot harder to get that club to work from the inside. So maybe just moving it back just a little bit can help you to get that club path working more from the inside. And to get to that Never Slice Again course, just click on the house icon at the top of the page. It's a little house. Click on that. It's going to take you to the home page. If you scroll down, I believe it's halfway down or so. That Never Slice Again course is on there, amongst other courses as well that you may want to check out. So Gregory S says, what's your handicap down to? So right now I'm about 5, and I'm not proud of that. But I just don't play as much. I used to be about 1 handicap, but I just don't get to play as much as I used to. So working on getting that down. Hopefully when the weather cools down, I'll get to play a lot more. And that was when I was playing every day. I was down to a 1. And in college, I was about 1 handicap. So, but yeah, not playing as much, not practicing as much. It's hard to stay very good when you're not able to play very much. So James Q says, Dr. Q, again, not a doctor, disclaimer. How about being sore on the outside of the lead hip after my best round ever? So as far as usually where that comes from is usually a hip bump. So basically you'll want to look at your compression line. So if you are bumping your hip out as you're coming into impact, you can end up with some soreness back here in your lead hip. So ideally what we want to be doing is we want to be getting to our lead side and pushing our hip back and out of the way. And that's going to allow us to turn and get through to the ball. But if you are bumping your hip, then that's usually going to lead to no rotation, and you're going to end up kind of throwing the arms in front. It doesn't mean you can't play good golf. Like if you have great timing and great awareness of impact, you can flip the club and play great golf. That's definitely one thing that can help you out quite a bit. Is having good awareness, but it just becomes more timing based, and the less you practice, the harder it is to play well. So I'd be looking at the compression line and looking at your swing on camera and draw that line at impact. Draw that line from your lead shoulder to your ankle and see if your hip is outside of that. Most likely, if it is, then you're kind of doing that bump out thing, and working on the compression line can help you with that. But again, if you're having some soreness in your hip, you're probably going to want to go see a doctor if you got some existing pain there. So Robert S. says, what's Clay's handicap? Clay was a +3. I knew for a while there. Again, he's not playing. He just had he's got maybe about an 8-month-old at home now, 7-8-month-old. So he hasn't been playing hardly any golf in the last year. So he probably not playing to that +3 right now. But when he was playing more and pretty often, he was at a +3 before. All right. So again, we got about 4 minutes left here. Go ahead and post your questions on there, and we'll go ahead and get them answered. All right. So John F. says, many times my putts are drifting left as they approach the hole. I typically like to have a slight arc with my putter path. What could contribute to this movement? So maybe you're just closing the face a little bit too much. Could be path. Like if you're bringing this club out and then in, that face can be coming down and shutting down. I actually had the same issue recently. And a lot of times what you feel is going on, that may not be the reality of what's going on. And there's actually a cool thing that you can do. If you have a slow motion camera on your phone, if you have an iPhone, you're going to have a slow motion, pretty good camera on your phone. So if I can grab a ball here, what you can do is you can actually, set up the camera to where it's at the golf ball level here, really, really close. And then you can set the line on your putter, and then you can hit and see what's going on when you hit it. So typically what you want to see happening is from this side angle is you want to see this ball kind of just lift up out of the turf just a little bit and then just start tumbling forward. You don't want to see the ball being hit into the turf and then bouncing up. And you don't want to see too much loft, which will lift it too much and it'll start putting backspin. So it'll start going up and then go like that, and then it'll hit the turf and start rolling forward. You want to see basically feel like this ball is kind of being suspended into air. So it's just kind of that line doesn't move hardly at all, or maybe it starts even tumbling forward and then it starts rolling forward. So that'd be ideal. So you want to adjust kind of the loft or maybe your forward shaft lean when you're coming into impact. And the other thing is that when you're looking from down the line, now you can, let's say that this camera is looking from down the line or kind of a top view of the golf ball. You can hit some shots and you can watch and see where this line turns. So you can see if the ball, if you're kind of cutting across and getting some of that spin that's going to make it, ideally you would want to hit it and that would just stay straight and start tumbling forward. But sometimes it'll kind of go like that or like that. So you can kind of have an idea of if the ball is turning over or not. Now they do make golf balls. Eyeline Golf actually has these golf balls where it's like a yin yang golf ball. Half of it's black and half of it's white. You can really see these things. So those are really cool, but you can just do it with a regular golf ball as well. Just set up that line so you can kind of see how it's going. But that would be, you can kind of get a really good idea if you're really swinging into out or out to in, and if you how you're hitting the ball. So that would give you an idea there. It could be that you're just lining up wrong. Maybe you're lining up left of the hole every time, but you feel like you're lining up at the hole. So that could be what's going on. So I would check your alignment. Get one of those chalk lines. Those are really, really good to use on the green. You can get them at any hardware store, but basically it's just like a string. It's in this box, and then you pull out this string, and it's got chalk on it. And then, if you have another person hold the box, and then you hold the string, you just snap the string on the ground, and it puts a line on there. You can putt, create a chute to putt through, find a straight putt, and start, honing in, making sure that you're, hitting it well. You could be hitting it, miss hits. If you hit it out on the toe, the face will open up a little bit. If you hit it on the heel, the face will close a little bit. So you could be healing a lot of putts, and that's what's causing you to miss putts to the left. So these are all things I look at. If you're miss-hitting putts, not hitting putts in the center of the face, I'd recommend doing the gate drill, which is basically where you put 2 tees in the ground that are a little bit wider than your putter head, and then put the ball set up with the putter in between those tees and putt. And if you're hitting the tee, then you'll definitely give you some instant feedback if you are hitting the tees or not. So I'd be definitely checking out those things. It's there's so many things that could be going on. It's hard to say exactly what, but those are some things I would check out. So last question here. I actually got to get going here. So Robert S. says, I feel that I clear my hips on the start of the downswing. Also, I feel that I get my weight on my left side that way. So I'm not sure what your question is. And one thing is, people ask me what's the best training aid that you can get, and most people already have the best training aid out there in their pocket, or at least the most affordable one, and that is a camera. The camera doesn't lie to you. It's going to tell you, most of the time it's going to tell you exactly what's going on with your technique. So I highly recommend you got to video your swing on camera. You said that you feel that you're doing this and you feel that you're doing that. The camera will tell you if you actually are or not. So you got to look on camera to see what's going on. But if you're getting really, it's those are kind of two opposite things. You're not really going to be able to clear your hips without having pressure in your lead foot. And you're not going to be able to have pressure in your lead foot or much pressure in your lead foot without getting that momentum weight transfer to your lead side. So I would imagine it may feel like you're clearing your hips and then moving your weight to your lead side, but that's not what's happening. You're getting your weight to your lead side, and then that pressure that you're putting into the ground is allowing you to open up your body into impact. So hopefully that helps, Robert. I'm not exactly sure what your question was. I actually got to get going here, so come back tomorrow. I'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. So join me tomorrow morning, and I'll talk to you then.